Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast. And I got with me today, the man, the myth, the legend, Jack Monson. So I'll do a quick bio on him, but Jack, you probably already know him. If you don't know him already from Social Geek Radio or as the CEO of Brand Journalists, he's also kind of a notorious character. He's been in digital marketing for 15 years. Maybe notorious, is that the right word? Like
I love the word notorious. That's great.
better,
Notorious.
better than infamous. But that's like more than
Infamous isn't bad either. I mean, there's a little bit of, Bond villain involved in infamous and
yeah.
notorious. So
Every time I
that
say
kind of film noirish.
yeah, it makes me think of Three Amigos when I say infamous. But yeah. Anyway, that's a tangent. But Jack, guys, if you don't know him, expert in digital marketing, and he's got a lot of insights to share about storytelling and how we can build better brands. We'll frame the topic in a second, but Jack, before I turn it over to you to tell us a bit more about you, what you're doing with Brand Journalists, he's also a horse rancher. If you didn't know that, so most people don't. But if you see how clean cut he is and sharp, and he's doing podcasting. So he's also spent a weekend shoveling horse manure and like getting dirt under his nails. So Jack, tell us more about you.
Well, it's kind of the same as what I do Monday through Friday, only that's a little bit more figurative, right? Shoveling a lot of stuff, getting dirt under my nails, digging holes, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's more of a weekend and summertime project. But yeah, I've been in this space now, Dave, for about 15 years in the franchise side of the world after doing a bunch of marketing stuff and digital marketing stuff and social media back when we called it online marketing. Remember those days? And then before that, I was in radio for several years too. And
Mhm.
what I really found was it's all kind of the same thing, right? Broadcasting, radio, digital marketing, and franchising. It's all about storytelling. And we're just using different tools and different channels and different places to find audiences and tell our stories. But it really is just about storytelling.
Yeah, no, it really is, and that's what we want to focus on today. Is what do you see? Well, the topic we're gonna focus on is how do you improve storytelling to make your brand sizzle a little more, to help it align better with market expectations. There are a lot of reasons why you've got to really revisit storytelling. As we were talking about it before, I'm like, I'm probably going to take a lot of notes because maybe my storytelling's a bit off. I don't think I do a great job of it personally at ClientTether. So tell me, start, Jack. What do you see in the market? Where are people getting this concept of storytelling wrong?
Well, I think what they're doing right is actually doing some storytelling after years of just, running random ad campaigns that are all about, call to action and click here and call here and just trying to get some leads. What people are doing right now over the past few years is really getting into their story and sharing what their brand is all about. What they're doing wrong is they're still focusing on their personal journey story, or as I call it, the origin story, right?
Yeah.
The most interesting thing about Spider-Man isn't that he was bitten by a radioactive spider, right? That's like that should be 2 minutes at the beginning of a movie, and then we get into the real plot of the story and the real conflict, right? The same thing with any story you can come up with, whether it's Star Wars or anything else. The origin story is not the most interesting. And think about that when it comes to franchise brands. There are so many brands out there that focus on, hey, I'm Jack, the founder of Jack's Pizza, and my grandfather came over from Sicily in 1947 with the recipe. And the most important thing is to know that we have 43 locations and we're growing in these states, and our sales are up by 7%. Like, no one cares about that stuff, right? Even your family and kids don't care about that stuff, especially if someone's looking to buy a franchise. No one cares about the origin story or the founder's history. So much of that is just a big ego play. And I think a lot of agencies, especially in the franchise space, have served their customers poorly by focusing on that ego play of, here's the founder's story. That should be about this much of your franchise website, right? Just a tiny little bit to show that We do have a history and we've got some credibility. What people need to hear about is your customers. So if you're a franchisee, they need to hear from your customers. If you're a supplier in the space, like I am, like you are, Dave, they need to hear from your customers, the franchisors, right? What's their story? What's their problem that working with us may have solved? And then most importantly, if they're a franchisor, people need to hear from your franchisees. It's far more interesting than hearing your origin story about where your secret sauce was developed. So a great storytelling channel could be, let's just say website, or maybe it's a YouTube channel, or maybe it's TikTok or LinkedIn. But on any of those places, share stories of the franchisees talking about what their life is like being part of this franchise system. You know, what, not just how much money are they making right now, but what's their life really like? What do they do every day? How has this made them more fulfilled being part of this brand? That's what people want to see when they're checking out a franchise. So that's sort of the soapbox that I'm on right now, is tell better stories, but tell the stories of your franchisees, your customers, your clients, and let people learn about your brand by learning about your clients and your franchisees.
Oh man, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Two thoughts are bouncing around in my head right now. One, Brian Regan, the Me Monster bit. Have you heard
Yeah.
that before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it all boils down, like, I'm pretty convinced Dale Carnegie and his How to Win Friends and Influence People, that is probably one of the most fundamental books for marketing and sales anybody should just actually
100%.
digest,
Yeah.
because it's not about, if you want people to like your brand, it's never about you. It's about them. If you want to
Yeah.
market effectively, it's not about you, it's about them. The most boring thing I could tell people is, our founder founded Five Star Painting 27 years ago, brought on a team of people that everyone knows, like Scott and Chad, to make Five Star franchising and blah blah blah. Like, yeah, it's nice. Our founder is a franchisor. That's cute. That's like 10 seconds of what I tell people. So they're like, okay, you guys get it. But
Yeah.
it's like table stakes, right? But the problem is people are using table stakes marketing strategies as their brand message, and nobody cares about you. And
Yeah.
Melissa Pink said it when we recorded a podcast. She's like, nobody cares about your flavor of ice cream. They don't care.
No.
They don't care
No.
about the secret recipe. Just like you're saying, the Sicily example was so perfect. It's they care about your audience is, if you're selling franchises, is the person that's trying to change their lifestyle by buying a franchise. Or potentially, if you're looking for operators, if you're looking for investors, that's a different story too. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to tell a story that resonates with what they're hoping for. What's your alignment to their core values and their desires right now? And it's not 47 units and super special sauce and the perfect dash of oregano. No one cares.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see those stories all the time. It's one thing to have a page devoted to that on your website. Okay, it's not hurting anything by any means. And someone might actually want to read that someday.
Sure.
Where I really find fault with it is the truly horrible advertising out there in this space. When I see LinkedIn promoted posts and Facebook ads and Google ads that are all about, we're so great and we do this and we sold X number of units already this year, and we're doing it. It's like no one's buying into your we story. It's all about what's in it for me, and you've got to change those stories. And I guarantee if you just change that flavor of your advertising, you're going to get better leads that will close and they will be successful franchisees. That's another part of Fran Dev. And I don't want to rant too long about Fran Dev advertising, but the other part of it is there are so many people in this industry who are just looking for a large number of leads. And is it somebody who can write a check, right? Is it somebody who can fog a mirror and let's get them going?
Right.
What I find much more interesting is working with brands that we can find the perfect franchisee to work with them, right? Somebody who's actually going to be successful and still be in business 2 years from now, right? What a concept. Like that's much more interesting than, like, let's just get a big spreadsheet of leads to send over at the end of every month. Anybody can do that, right? It's called Google. Just dump more money into it. We'll give you all the names you want. They'll all suck, but we'll give you all the names you want. That's not interesting to me. It's interesting to me to find those people who, frankly, will be your franchisees whose stories you will tell 4 years from now, right?
Right. And it's man, there's a lot to unpack there that we could dive into, because it's not about this industry. When I came into it and I saw that the average was like a 1% or sub 1% close rate, I was like, y'all are doing something wrong. I don't know. I don't even know what's
Right,
going on
right.
yet.
Anybody can do this. Wow, let's
I
go.
know. I could walk into Central Park naked and sell something to more than 1% of the people there, right? And trust me, like, I don't work out anymore, so it's not going to be any appeal.
We'll at
But
least get you 2%. Yeah.
yeah, maybe 2%. It's terrible. It's terrible. And
Yeah.
so I've had people that have done like dead lead rehash campaigns and marketed and communicated right, and had 3 times the conversion rates with dead leads that people have with brand new leads that they're bringing through the door. And this isn't about us, but it's about they're doing it wrong. Everyone's
Yeah.
doing it wrong. It feels like, not everyone, but there are some people that have got it dialed in. They're awesome. But I agree with you. And the part that I wanted to share a thought about is when you're talking about focusing on the right people, a lot of brands, the fundamentals of like marketing they're all the same, right? And everyone should know them, but people don't follow them. It's, you start first with like, what are you better in the world than anybody at? And then who should care the most about that? Like, who is our real ideal target client? And
Mm-hmm.
once you figure out those 2 things, all your marketing should fall around that with strategy. But what people don't know is they don't actually focus in very well on who's our ideal candidate. They throw demographics out there like, well, how much liquid capital have you got? How much, what's your net worth? And what geography do you live in? Done. And then they bring on people that are not going to be successful. So
Yeah.
they're getting this whole psychographic part of who they should be bringing in. And I'm wondering, what have you seen in that area? Like, how do people need to shift their focus and maybe refocus on the right candidates? Because I think that's core to everything we're talking about.
Yeah, well, I think the best thing we can use AI, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming few minutes. The best thing we can do with AI in this industry is use that to help us target some advertising, right? What all of the big channels are doing right now is kind of shifting from this. You get to create your own demographic profile to let us use all of the data we have to find people who would be a good fit. And I think when we used to use demographics, back in the old days, 6 months ago, we would make all of these mistakes by, so many people are like, well, we're going to target millennials. Really? That's 100 million people in the US and Canada. That's not targeting, right? That's broadcasting. That's painting everybody with the same brush. And I think what people got wrong was, well, millennials like this brand, and now Gen Zs are going to come along and they're going to like this brand and they'd be perfect for it. What do you mean they? There's 100 million of them too, right? That's not targeting. There are 99 million Gen Zs that would be terrible for this concept, right? So let's stop with the broad demographic stuff, and even down into, well, we're a perfect fit for veterans. Really? Well, which veterans?
Yeah.
And I see it a lot, even when we break demographics down gender wise. It's like, well, this is a great franchise concept for women. I'm like, really, half the population of the earth, this is a great concept for? Really? Like, no, let's really dig down. Yeah. Talk about 1970s marketing, right? Like, just, let's just label everybody and run some TV ads based on who might be watching this show. So I think really getting down into people who are most likely to engage with the ideas that you're sharing, and maybe we can get into some of the channels where we're sharing this, but who's likely to listen to a podcast? Who's likely to click on a Facebook ad and have a messenger conversation with someone from your brand and get more information that way? Or who's more likely to go to this website and do some research and dig through all of those pages that some people say don't work anymore, but we still need to use them, right? So who's most likely to engage with this brand? That's who we need to target.
Yeah. And also knowing who's most likely to be successful with the franchise ownership.
100%.
That's
Yeah.
where the emerging brands, they struggle a lot because they don't know. There's a cool study. Who is it? Thomas Scott actually shared this in a podcast. The Jersey, was it Jersey Mike's that did the
Hmm.
study called the
Hmm.
franchisees, and everybody thinks the corporate refugee with an MBA that's hyper capitalized is going to be your top performing franchise owner. And they found that they made up the middle third, middle half
Right.
of all of their franchise performers. It was actually the people who were passionate about the brand that were the ones that were on the top of the spectrum as far as performance. They weren't MBA, they weren't hard, Ivy Leaguers. They weren't even, some of them weren't even that well capitalized, but they had passion for the brand and the service first, and that was what led them to be top performers. They figured it out. They figured the rest out.
Yeah.
And
Corporate refugees. I hate that term. That's like, okay, so your main qualification here is you worked for a corporation for 20 years and now you don't work there anymore, not by your choice, right?
yeah,
Um, and I don't know that that's a great entrepreneur. It's somebody who might need this franchise, but is it somebody who is going to do well for the franchise? I say more likely than not, they're not going to be a successful business owner. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad we're moving away from that whole be your own boss, corporate refugees, all of the taglines that we've seen for the past 25 years that got a lot of mediocre results. If you look at the history of franchise sales just over the past few decades, man, we should be way further ahead than we are right now, right?
Yeah.
Like all of the upturns and downturns in the economy and all of the things that have changed over let's just say the past 25 years, franchising should have skyrocketed way before now, right? I know in the past 15 years we've really seen this nice jump, and right now, I mean, my forecast is bullish. I think we're going to have an amazing couple of years in growing some franchise brands, but that should have happened back in the 90s, right?
Mhm.
That should have happened earlier than that, but it didn't. So let's cut that baggage loose and just move forward, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, there are a lot of people they're listening that probably still stick with the be your own boss tactics,
Be
and
your own boss.
but bear in mind, and the broker community, like, to them, many of them really do care. Some of them, like, if they're like, well, I want to place somebody and commission on to the next one, but some of them genuinely care about success. But you
Yeah.
all should be thinking a bit differently about who you're targeting so that you're bringing the right people to the franchise brand, or eventually the franchisors are going to say, I don't really want to work with his candidates anymore. They're like our bottom third performers. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's prioritize somebody else's lead. So it does kind of have a cyclical effect. If you're scraping the bottom of the barrel and then serving that up, eventually people stop buying your wares. So let's you and I were talking before, though. I want to touch on this point about framing, because we
Hmm.
said, okay, this is what sucks, right? We talked about what people are like. It's awesome that people are trying to do better storytelling, having a cohesive story strategy across every platform. Like, those things are awesome, and yet a lot of people are struggling with this idea of storytelling. Like, how do you go from where you're at today, if you start looking at your story? Maybe we talked about maybe audience match, marketing
Hmm.
strategy, aligning around like real ideal clients. Maybe what's one or two red flags that you should notice if your story is not aligning with the ideal candidates you're trying to bring in? What would people notice first? And then let's talk about reframing, because I think that's going to be really helpful for people.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to look at with every brand is what's the essence of what someone does if they're part of that brand every day, right? Is it all about I'm fixing appliances? I don't know. Or am I fixing a roof? Are we building something within a house? Or, as my friend Kayla Ryan says, are we making a house beautiful? Right. That's one of the best things I've heard recently is, for the one of the brands that she markets, Up Closets, she says, don't look at it as building a closet. Look at it as making a house beautiful. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, that just opened up a whole lot of imagery for me, right? There's so much video and imagery and photos that we could include in some sort of campaign there that isn't about building a closet. It's about making a house beautiful. And that's where we can really interest some people in wanting to do that kind of franchise and do that kind of work every day. So I think reassessing what your own brand does. Food brands are really easy with this too, right? So many people get caught in the weeds of, we make pizzas, we make tacos, we make, whatever. Um, no, you make life flavorful and fun and enjoyable and family time, and like really go down that road of making it an experience with some really good food at the same time that it's a good business to be in for various reasons, right? So kind of getting away from the stuff down in the weeds of what you do every day, and take a step back and say, well, what does this brand really do? We make a house beautiful, we make family time fun, we help you do something else in your life better, right? And I think that's the exciting part of branding, is taking a step back and saying, this isn't just this narrow little thing that we think our brand does. It's something much more than that. And that's how you change lives and make your customers' lives better. And then that gets back into the storytelling of, you're telling the story of your customer's experience with you.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I work with tons of service brands, so home services in particular, we have tons of clients in that space. But painting, it's hard to differentiate yourself and do effective storytelling in painting, because what do you really say? Like, hey, we paint better than the other guys, or
Yeah.
our paint sticks better, or our color matching is more
Our
awesome.
colors are better. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, so that's a space where you've got to come up with some true storytelling, and like really, like, what it's not about the paint job, it's not about the roof job, it's not about the closet job. It's about, what are you doing to change the life of your customer. And so,
Mhm.
these, a lot of them, I see some good things where there's framing, like, we're rejuvenating your space, we're renewing your life, whatever. We're protecting the value of your most valuable asset, or whatever it is. Like, you have to figure out what your customer looks for, and then that's it. Like, there was a maid service. We work with several of them, some of the top ones, and one of them, it never, I don't think it ever came to light, but one of the concepts they were kicking around was, well, what are we actually doing? Like, I'm cleaning your home, all right, I'm scrubbing your toilet, but that's not like, no one's going to be like, oh, thanks, you're scrubbing my toilet. But what are you actually doing? Oh, we're giving people their Saturdays back. We're
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
you your weekends back, giving you your evenings back. Like, they started to realize, oh, what we're actually doing isn't just cleaning a home. We're taking this busy couple that has a couple of kids, or this elderly couple that they're working or whatever, and we are giving them time. They're paying us to have a weekend where they don't have to touch a toilet. That's actually a much better story than,
Yeah.
we clean stuff.
That's a brilliant reframing job right there. Seriously. Like, what's your Saturday morning worth?
Yeah.
I don't know. Right
That's
now,
a
my
great.
Saturday mornings are worth more than any other part of my week. So I will,
Yeah.
if I can get out of that, heck yeah,
It's
that's
only
a great story to tell.
$250 a month, to get out of that. Well, geez, that's, my
Yeah,
Saturday mornings was a lot more
that
than that. I mean,
that's what you spend on 2 dinners, right? Like, so
yeah.
yeah, great reframing right there.
So let's talk about channels, Jack. Tell me a little bit about, we talked about it before, but where should people, once they get their story right, where should they be building their content and telling this story?
The hard part of this is, the answer is everywhere, right? I think too often marketers think, well, we're going to spend a lot on Facebook now, or we're jumping into Instagram or TikTok, or this very day I see a ton of people jumping into Threads, right? The latest thing from Meta. um, the unfortunate answer is, you've got to be in every place at least a little bit, because your customers and your audience, they're everywhere, right? They're not only on Instagram, they're not only on LinkedIn. You've got to try a little bit of everything, see what's working, and not abandon some place completely. I see a lot of people who are like, well, Facebook just doesn't work the way it used to. I'm like, really? Okay, you
Mhm.
good luck with that, because there's still, a billion people who are touching that thing every day. So you've got to be a little bit everywhere, and there will be some places that work better for your brand than other places, but you've got to try it all. And I think the one constant right now with most of the social media channels is you've got to do a better job with video. And it goes back to the storytelling that we were talking about earlier, not just sharing images of your pizza, your ice cream, your cleaning crews, whatever, but really getting into the stories of your franchisees, and franchisees getting into the stories of their customers. So having good videos is essential right now for long form video that would be on your website and on YouTube, but also really good short form video that you're going to see on YouTube Shorts and TikTok and Reels and places like that.
Yeah.
What we tend to find that works better than anything is not doing the old school, corporate films and corporate type branding things where it's, hi, I'm Dave Hansen and I'm the CEO of ClientTether, and here's our story.
Yeah.
Love you, Dave. Nobody wants to see that, right? So
Right.
what really works, what we do at Brand J is much more of we call them mini documentaries, where we're going to take that franchisee or take that customer and do a little mini documentary on their story and why this brand is working for them and how it's changed their lives. So
Yeah.
those documentaries can be a few minutes long as a nice brand story on your website, or they can be 30 seconds long as a TikTok video. So there will be people who watch either of those or maybe both, but getting your video done right by professionals, by actual filmmakers and documentarians, that's sort of the next step. If somebody's not doing that, that would work very well for them. And then as far as other channels, obviously you and I are big proponents of podcasts. I think there's a loyal podcast following out there that's not going away. It's not getting smaller. More people are discovering podcasts every day. And I think if you're not telling your brand's story and your franchisee story on some sort of podcast, I think you're kind of missing out on that. It's an affordable, easy thing to produce. And there's a lot of brands out there that are doing it really well right now and telling some great stories of their franchisees. So if you're not doing a podcast of some sort, check it out, give it a try. The great thing about podcasts, as opposed to a lot of social media stuff, is it's really evergreen.
Yep.
This podcast we're recording right now, I guarantee there's going to be somebody in the year 2026 who checks this out just because they found one of your other podcasts and they thought it was cool. So now they're going to go back and check something else out. Or maybe they like the title of the show. Or, they saw the thumbnail and they're like, oh, where is that guy at out in the woods? Let's check this out. And so I think podcasts are really the truest evergreen form of sharing stories right now, because we don't have to make it really newsworthy and current and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can avoid news and politics and all of that kind of stuff and just talk about general business ideas. And 3, 4, 5 years from now, that podcast will still be relevant. And you won't mind having it still on your website or on your YouTube channel a few years from now. So those are the two big ones that I'm focused on right now. Any sort of short form video and any form of podcasting.
Yeah. I want to riff on podcasting for a minute because I kind of stumbled into it. I had people tell me, you should podcast. You're pretty good at this.
Yeah.
And I felt like, and a lot of you probably feel like it's such a time commitment. It's so tricky. Like I don't have a radio voice like Jack Monson. Nobody wants to hear me. And so I had several of those stories bouncing around my head. And then I was like, I'm going to try it. And the reason I wanted to try it was because I wanted to have regular, not just podcast content, but the beauty of a podcast is the spin-off content, right? Like from this episode, we could cut 7 clips out that are 30 seconds to 45 seconds long, and it doesn't take any more effort. You and I don't have to spend any more time recording. You just have to have someone clip it and then create segments from it. And there's even AI-driven tools now. What is that one, Snapped or something?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them that
there are a couple
can
of great ones.
edit video. And think about this too. I just started, after all of these years, I started transcribing all of the podcasts, and now I've got all of this text-based stuff that, there are some people out there who don't want to listen to a podcast, but they might read the entire piece on a website, or at least summaries of it.
Yeah.
And I think, think of the years worth of podcasts out there that weren't transcribed, that we'll probably never go back and transcribe everything, but that's a whole nother way to repurpose this conversation that you and I are having right now. Dave, how long have you been doing this podcast? How many episodes are you up to now?
I'm about at 70 episodes. I've been doing it about 2.5 years. So,
Dude, that's amazing. You know how many podcasts just, close shop after a few months, or, maybe they don't even get to 10 episodes, but so there's something about this that's working for you, right? And maybe it's you just like doing it, but you've obviously gotten a lot of good feedback. I see your stuff on LinkedIn and other places a lot. And so there's something that's driving you forward to keep doing this, right? So that's
yeah.
part of your story
Mhm.
is, you started podcasting, and if you hit 70 episodes, that's more than 95% of podcasts ever, right?
Mhm.
So there's something that this is working for you, and I don't see you stopping, right? There's those that stop and those that keep going, right?
Yeah.
And so this is obviously something that's worked for you. And you know, I've tried other channels and other forms of communication. I used to do a lot of blogging. I used to
Mhm.
write a ton of blogs. I don't write any blogs anymore. It's just
Yeah.
not, I don't enjoy it anymore. So I'd
Mhm.
rather just do a podcast. So
Yeah.
so I think you got to find the channels that work for you, that you're good at, and you actually enjoy doing it, or you're just not going to do it anymore.
Right. And there's one other note I'll add to that, kind of circling back to the earlier content. You also need to find out what are the content watering holes for your target demographic, right?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
you mentioned a couple of, we got all sorts of segments. Some categories of franchising are really popular. They resonate super well with, let's say, 50 to 45 to 55-year-old folks. I think senior care is in that
Mhm.
space. A lot of these folks they've been taking care of mom and dad now for a little while, and they're like, this is a huge need. I'm passionate about this. Uh, so you need to find the channels where your 45 to 55-year-olds are consuming content. You might be surprised how many of them might be consuming content on TikTok, but you might also be surprised how few of them are consuming content on Instagram. Like, so having a little bit of content everywhere is a really good idea, because you actually don't know so well where your ideal demographic psychographics are going to be eating up content, but making sure that you have an idea of where the bulk of them are going to be. Do some research, find out where the current trends. Don't look at, and be careful, because there's all sorts of content out there about, what are the trends in 2020 about consumption. Well, guess what? Some of the channels that are really popular right now didn't exist in 2020. So
Right,
you've got to make
right.
sure you're checking the timestamps on all that data, and also the authority. A lot of people are just quoting a HubSpot article that was written, that was quoted from somewhere else. It's actually based on a Harvard Business Review article. That's actually based on the long-term lead management study that was done by InsideSales.com 10 years ago. Like, you've got to be careful how relevant the information is you're basing your strategy off of too.
Yeah, and what was their agenda in writing that article about why this channel's good or why that channel's bad, right? And
Yeah.
think about this.
Mhm.
Very soon we'll be reading articles written by AI that are taking into consideration other articles from the past written by AI, right? So
Yeah.
we're just getting a little further and further away from wisdom and reality into, it's just words on paper. It might not actually affect you. One other thing I wanted to sort of jump on what you just said there about channels and things not working in certain places and at certain times. We hear so much now of when we talk to a brand about doing some personal branding on TikTok,
Yeah.
and the first thing they think of is what? Oh, that's for kids, right? Oh,
Uh-huh.
that's just for teenagers. That's for my kids watch TikTok. There's no business happening on TikTok. And it's like, I'm here to tell you, in 2009, people said the same thing about Facebook,
Mhm.
right? And I'm sure back in 1952, people said the same thing about television,
Mhm.
right? It's a fad, it's for kids. We don't want our very
Brand in that channel.
important brand on that channel, right? And so remember that anytime somebody says, TikTok is for kids, well, I'm here to tell you the fastest growing segment on TikTok right now is people 55 plus, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Instagram has been that way for a while. And Facebook has actually gone from being it's just for college kids to now it's just for old people, right? So
Yeah.
be careful when kind of going back to our conversation about millennials and Gen Zs and targeting them. It's the same thing with channels, right? There are plenty of young people who are still reading websites, and there are plenty of older people who are watching TikTok. So don't get too caught up into painting everybody from a generation or other demographics with the same brush and saying they're all here or they're all there. What you said about you've got to do a little bit in every channel to hit everybody. Unfortunately, that's just what we have to do right now. So it's how do you do that efficiently?
Yeah, that's a really good point there. It's funny on TikTok. I've kind of been one of those people that thought that's dumb. I was also one of the people that thought. Remember when everyone like 6 years ago, everyone started doing these videos and they're
Uh,
content. And I was like,
yeah.
y'all suck. That's crappy content. Like, stop walking around. The camera's moving. But then I realized, oh, well, I can't beat them, so I better join them because everyone's consuming that content. And then I realized, oh, this is more authentic and natural. Now I get why everybody likes this rather than the hyper polished, studio produced videos where you're like, I can see he's got like something to get rid of the sheen on his face. The makeup, it makes him feel fake, right? Like
Yeah.
we could see that stuff. But I was at a conference and it was a roofing client of ours, and they had their own conference and they had a couple of experts come in. And one of the guys that was actually working for this like a supplier in the roofing industry, he's a major TikTok influencer. And I had a chance to chat with him like, now seriously, how effective is this for business right now? Because my impression was like it's just a bunch of kids, college kids flunking classes in the back of the room, consuming dumb TikTok videos and learning how to do dumb dances. Like that was what I thought TikTok was. And he's like, you have no idea how wrong you are. And people don't usually tell me that. So I kind of sat back and said, okay, like tell me why. Like, and he's like, all right, let me give you an example. And he showed me this video. It's a time-lapse video. It took about 30 seconds or however long, I forget how long they are on TikTok. And it was just of somebody doing vinyl siding.
Mm-hmm.
You see this worker zipping the vinyl siding up the wall. And he said, guess how many people viewed this video? And I had no idea. And it was like 80,000 people in the first like 4 hours. The guy's got a decent following, but it was just like just took off. And he said, guess how many leads came in from people who needed vinyl siding done on their home in the region where this guy operates? I was like, no idea. It's like 12 leads in like 6 hours or something like that. I
Yeah.
was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Guess how
Yeah.
much it cost him to post authentic organic content on TikTok? I was like, okay, now you're talking $0. All I did was set up a
Yep.
camera on site while his team's working, and boom, publish that time lapse video. And so he is kind of the bleeding edge in the roofing industry of doing the same thing. And so it doesn't matter what space you're in. If people are consuming that content, what you have to do is figure out what's an engaging soundbite that I can put into this channel that will appeal to the audience that's going to be wanting to consume that kind of stuff. And this, so I think you would get back into the framing and the branding and the storytelling. Like you've got more experience in that channel than I do. How do you see that working right now? How can people actually leverage TikTok for
Well,
franchise development, as an example?
I think it can go one of two ways. And unfortunately, the first way is what everyone thinks about because we've been taught by digital gurus and experts. If you're just listening to this, you didn't see me just roll my eyes.
Oh, you also missed me do the air quotes. Sorry.
The air quotes, right?
Yeah.
Experts, social media guru.
Uh-huh.
TikTok ninja. I think that's going to be a title someday. AI expert.
Wizards. AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please, please.
But so many of those people over the years have, and so many really mediocre agencies have just focused everything on, how many leads do we get? What's the cost per lead? How many clicks did we get? Right. And that's important for some digital marketing and lead generation. It's very important to get those leads in. But something like TikTok and back to podcasting too, there's also an element of brand building and brand awareness you need to do there too before you can start expecting these leads to come flowing in, right?
Yeah.
So your example of the guy doing siding, he got 12 leads off of that. I would say 6 months from now, that's going to be exponentially higher because right now he's just still building a brand. Look at what this guy does with the house. Look at what this guy's doing with siding and color and things like that. And then it turns into a thing, right? And somebody who watched it today but didn't, swipe or click or whatever, they might actually swipe or click or search or find you again 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And how is that even being attributed to that TikTok video you did yesterday? It's not, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of the content that we're sharing on it, especially the storytelling stuff, we're putting it out there, not so somebody becomes a lead today, but they might become a lead 6 months from now. So don't underestimate the power of that, because it's not going to show up on your lead sheet this week, right? So remember, there's a lot of brand building out there, especially if you've got an emerging brand,
Mhm.
which a lot of our friends, Dave, in this space, that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a brand that might be known pretty well in one part of the country, but you're moving into another region, you've got to do a lot of brand awareness before you can expect all of those clicks to come in. So think of every piece out there as, what's this going to do for my leads? What's this going to do for my awareness? Because you're really telling, two different tales at the same time.
Right. And we go back to what you were talking about earlier of don't be the me monster, right? So what you can't do is take
Yeah.
your stuffy corporate dry videos about, well, my grandfather from Sicily, right? Like you can't take that, cut it and drop it on the channel. No one's going to like it. It's not, you got to study the channel. That's one thing I found is you have to, if as you're trying to enter a channel, like I'm not a huge fan of like, I was one of those naysayers about Facebook too, like, it's a fad. It's gonna go. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I was 70 years old when I was like in my 30s. So, yeah, it's gonna go away, dumb kids. But
These
it was,
damn kids.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know, but it was there to stay. And like I had to like swallow my pride and be like, okay, I was dead wrong about that one, dead wrong about TikTok. Vine, I called that one, but it was a lucky guess. Like
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
it got consumed and disappeared.
And right now we're looking at Threads, right? The latest thing from Meta.
Mhm.
What's it going to do? I don't know. Am I putting all my chips on the Threads card right now? No. But we're watching, we're involved, we're checking it out, we're engaging. Let's see what brands end up doing with this. And I'm the same way you were with Facebook. I'm the same way with TikTok. I look at this and I'm just like, what is this phenomenon that is nothing but self-help and people who desperately need therapy, right? That's how I see it. However, then I got into it from a brand side and it's like, wait a minute, this is a great place to tell stories, right? It's a great place to share a video and reach people who are really interested in stuff. And I'll say one other thing about TikTok that is drastically different than everything else we've been learning from agencies for years. TikTok is not about your audience, right? The problem with Facebook is you had to build up a big audience and then you had to pay to even reach that same audience anymore. And the
Yeah.
other social media channels followed suit, right? You have to spend a lot of money just to keep up with your habit, right? TikTok may go that way at some point, but it really started from a standpoint of it's pushing content out to people who have no idea who you are, right? And
Yeah.
that's really exciting to me. So you don't have to be a follower to see your TikTok video or my TikTok video. That's really interesting. I don't know if it will always stay that way, but right now it's time to jump on that and reach some people like your friend with the siding business who are spending a grand total of $0 to reach hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people who never heard of them before. And it didn't cost a cent, just a little bit of time and a little bit of imagination.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Well, speaking of imagination, everyone's imaginations are running a little wild right now about how AI fits into all of this. And you'd mentioned it before, and they're all of a sudden these people, it was kind of like when the pandemic came out, all of a sudden everybody was a freaking virologist, right? Like, oh, I know
Yeah.
everything about it. I'm like, okay. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was legitimately like a pre-med student, did everything except for take the MCAT and go. And I'm pretty savvy about how the human body works. I'm like, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And you are embarrassing yourself on social media. And so are all of your friends that are liking and commenting on your stupid comment that has nothing to do with science. And like, and so I'm always a little bit of a cynic and a skeptic, but I come from a position in that world of like, well, I kind of know how this works. Like I'm no doctor, but like I aced that class. And but in this case, AI is kind of the same thing right now. Like everybody and their cousins all of a sudden an AI expert because they went into Chat GPT and asked it to give them a summary of how AI works. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
not all
How does this work? Yeah.
yeah. But being a cynic doesn't mean there's not a lot of value there. So like one, can we dispel a couple of like concerns? Everyone's like AI is taking over the world and no one will be able to write content ever again. First of all, I think that's bogus. And I'll
Right.
share one thought on that because I saw like I came from the language industry where we not created, we leveraged like IBM Watson and Blue and like all these emerging AI engines like 8 years ago, guys. This is not new stuff, and we helped work out the kinks and figure. I didn't do this personally, by the way, but like I was in the industry where everyone was working with AI to try to figure out how to translate faster, and started to really build these natural language processing engines that are the base of what ChatGPT does. So this is not anything new. I know somebody who's been leveraging ChatGPT content development type stuff for like 4 years in the franchising space. So like,
Hmm.
sorry guys, you're all a little late to the story, but there are a bunch of people pretending to be experts now that are just reading articles. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's your experience been so far, Jack, with this?
It's been exactly what you're saying. I always look for the headline on LinkedIn, and what does that headline say? If it says anything about AI expert, I put it in the same category that I put 10 years ago when someone said social media expert or guru.
Yeah,
I just dismiss them right away, right? Like anybody's an expert in something that's been, part of the zeitgeist for 8 months now, right? So um, I talk a lot about AI. I have a lot of stuff on my podcast about AI. I
yeah,
am in no means an expert, but I enjoy talking to people who know much more about it than I do, right?
mhm,
That's my role in this little clam bake is, they're the rock stars. I'm just the disc jockey, right? Just kind of
yeah,
putting it all together. And that's what I find interesting. So we had mentioned a bit ago our mutual friend Dan Monahan from Clear Summit. He's one of the guys who I'm behind, right? Like
yeah,
when he shares something, I'm going to read it. And he's not out there touting himself as an AI expert, but he's someone who I trust as a business leader, right?
right, mhm,
I know he's not the doctor behind the scenes building it, but he's one of the people who can take something, whether it was the internet 20 years ago or digital marketing 15 years ago. He can take something and apply it to his businesses and your business, right? and
yeah,
and that's what I'm looking for in someone that I just want to follow and see what's working for them, and they have that level of transparency. I'll tell you a quick story about Dan. um, I got together with him in January of 2023. We were down in Florida at the Titus School for Franchising, had a little event down there, and he and I had been tasked with putting together a panel for IFA in February about, you're going to love this blast from the past, about the metaverse and maybe crypto and maybe NFTs and all of this wonderful stuff that franchises were supposed to fall in line with and be in love with. And we
right,
got together, a month before the show, and we both looked at each other and said, "This thing's dying, right? Like
yeah,
no one in franchising is using the metaverse. Everybody's running away from NFTs. Crypto was starting to collapse at the time.
yeah,
What are we going to do?" When we had the same idea, we need to talk about AI,
yeah,
because it had been about 6 weeks or so since ChatGPT had officially launched.
mhm,
So we gathered a few other people who were, early adapters, including Robert Mitchell and Patty Rother, and we put together a panel on not here's the be all end all of AI for franchising, but
Right.
here are several things that you should consider.
Hmm.
And I think that's where Dan and the others really catch my attention on a regular basis by saying, here are the things you should consider, or here are some things that might help your business. And none of these folks come off as, this is how it is. We're the experts, and now pay us a lot of money to be the experts. No, they're really just sharing good information. And I think this whole AI story kind of fits into one of the things I love about franchising. It's just shared information, sharing it with people who could be a competitor, could be a business partner someday, could be, a customer, but we're all just constantly sharing this kind of information. I see it with your podcast. It's what I'm trying to do on a regular basis. And I see so many people in this space that are just sharing ideas. And next year we'll be talking about something else,
Hmm.
right? But there will be somebody in this space who's sharing something interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about the space. I can go sit down across the table and have lunch with a competitor, I think everyone's got kind of an abundance mindset. Not everyone, but like blue sky. There's so much space. Like let's just make it better. And because a
Yeah.
rising tide lifts all ships, and I
Yeah.
love that about this space. I thought it was baloney, by the way, when I got in the industry, like the whole franchise fam and how collaborative it was. Went to a few conferences and I was like, whoa, like this is weirdly different, like a little Twilight Zone moment for me, but. Just one thought, and maybe we wrap up on AI here. I saw everyone in the translation industry 8 years ago was freaking out about this, and I hear a lot of people, especially my marketing, content developers, they're all freaking out, like, "Oh no, it's going to take our jobs." What's going to happen, and this is not me because I'm like a prophet, but because I've already seen it happen, how it transformed the whole industry. What's going to happen is the people who are translating all day, instead of being translators, and we still need translators, there's still hundreds of thousands of translators around the world, guys. Their jobs are still there. And AI took over that space a long time ago. What happened though is the bulk of the industry shifted from doing the translation themselves to editing the translation after it came out of a machine. And that's kind of the way of the whole translation industry. A ton of that is now done. Even things like patent translation into Japanese, that's being done by AI first, and these natural language processing algorithms, and then it's being spit out for a human to do post edit. This is kind of the way that the content development world will shift. My strong opinion is that you'll see more and more people. We leverage it for content we develop. Our marketing gal, we'll draft what we want it to be about. She'll plug in a few keywords, spit it into Chat GPT. It'll throw something out that is pretty obviously written by Chat GPT, but it's 80% of what she needs. And now she spends half as much time editing content and making sure it sounds natural and making sure it sounds like our brand, which is a little more professionally playful than like the boring tone
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
Chat GPT. That's what you'll be doing, guys, at least in my personal strong opinion. But it could be different, but I don't think
No, I think especially what you said about making it sound like your brand. Um, AI will get better and better at that, making it sound like it was your brand or making it sound like it came from, name a famous person. But I think your editor, your writers, your creatives will be able to do that better than any AI program. And and even if an AI program can do that, at some point you're still going to need a human being to make some decisions about content and copy, and does this image look a little bit better than that? I mean, there's still plenty of art in content. It's not all science, right? So I think what you said about the replacing everybody, yeah, there's a lot of panic out there. If you're going to be replaced by AI, you should have gotten into a different line of work a long time ago, right? I mean, it's just, save yourself and go find something that only you can do. And I think that's something else that a lot of our friends in franchising are really good at. Is they're the only one that can do this. They're the only one that can do the type of franchise development work they do, or the type of the type of technology that they have. Nobody else is doing that, or the type of marketing that they're doing, or a podcast. Like, do something that, find something to do that you can do a little bit better than anybody else, and you're never going to have to worry about a competitor or AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amen to that. When Jim Collins, I think, would agree with that statement as well.
Yeah. Oh, love Jim Collins. So I think that was the first business book I ever read back in the day.
I think so
My old
too.
boss gave me that book. We gave everybody in our company that book. And it was like, oh, I still think of that 30 years later. How long ago did he write that book? It still makes that same kind of impression.
Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah, Jack, I want to thank you. This has been, I think, really instructive and constructive and helpful. So, guys, in it's a couple summary thoughts for you. Make sure that you're discovering the core audience and what they care about, where they consume content, and start producing, start creating. Use video more and more. If you ever hear me on a stand or doing a training, you're going to hear me preach about that in your email channel, in your texting. Use video more and more and more. That's how people are communicating now. And then also, don't be afraid of AI. Learn how to leverage it. It's not terrifying. It's not going to take over the world. You know, Terminator's not around the corner. It's a tool though that we need to have in our belt, so we can leverage that as well, and make sure that we're getting in the right channels. You know, Jack, you can be found on Social Geek Radio, LinkedIn. How else would you recommend people reach out to you if they want to learn more from you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn, I'm only on there about 20 hours a day, maybe 21. So you can find me there anytime. Check it out on Social Geek Radio and also at brandj.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks again for being my guest, Jack. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.